Trigger warning before I start that I am going to be talking about a dramatic airplane mishap here. So if you don't want that kind of story, jump ahead 2.5 minutes. So, a sports radio host in Dallas named Craig Miller told a story 20 or so years ago that really stuck with me. He was on a private jet flying home from a Dallas Cowboys away game. About halfway through the flight, he heard a very loud pop, and almost immediately the plane went into a nosedive. He could see into the cockpit, and the pilots were both still awake and alert, and they looked in control but panicked, and they were saying nothing to any of the passengers. No one had any idea what was going on. And Craig thought to himself as the plane plummeted, wow, I'm going to die in a plane crash. You only ever really hear about plane crashes, but here it is happening to me. Amazing. Like, huge bummer, but I guess amazing. And after what was probably less than a minute, but what felt like ages to him, the plane finally leveled off. They were cruising steady once again. The pilot communicated then what happened. A seal around the door apparently burst. Well, he didn't know that at the time. All they knew is there was a sudden drop in cabin pressure, and they had to get the plane to an altitude of 10,000 feet. Everything's okay. We'll be on the ground shortly. Days later, Craig was visited by agents from the NTSB who were investigating the incident. He told them what happened, and it all corroborated what the pilots understood to be the problem. The NTSB folks said, yeah, a seal around the door apparently burst, causing the cabin pressure drop. And that is actually what doomed pro golfer Payne Stewart, who died in a plane crash in 1999. It's almost certain and pretty swift death as the body loses oxygen and consciousness very quickly in that case. The pilot, in this case, remembered his training and knew what to do immediately, and that saved everyone on the plane. Craig still flies, of course, but he won't really do small planes anymore. But what struck him and me most about this story was the man sitting next to him on the flight. That man was holding a camera, one of those like old school point and click disposables. And as the jet began to plummet, the man immediately grabbed the camera and started taking pictures of the aisle, the other passengers, the windows, and himself. And after the plane reached a safe altitude, Craig asked him, why did you start taking pictures? And the man said, I don't know. My first thought when I was sure we were all going to die was someone needed to document it. The 2015 indie mockumentary Savageland features a photographer just as committed to the visual journaling of a disaster. And that idea makes total sense to me. We want people to know what happened when we're gone. But the problem is, it's hard to understand a life only by what it leaves behind. Hi, Cecil.
Hi, Jeffrey.
As a photographer, what do you most like taking pictures of?
What do I most like taking pictures of?
Roadkill and children. I know that.
Roadkill, children, and zombies.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like photographing sculpture is always a really rewarding activity because it changes depending on the light. A lot of people are really good portrait photographers. I was never a good portrait photographer. I like architecture, actually. I engage much more closely with architecture than I do with stupid people and their faces. Yeah, people are tough. Like, because I think it's not only taking a picture of somebody, but also having a picture taken of them. You know, as a photographer, you're trying to catch that unguarded moment when they're not putting on a face, you know, doing the cheesy smile or whatever persona they adopted when they got their first school picture taken and then have kept however many years later. And you're looking for the moment when they drop that and their natural selves. And I'm just not great at that.
Yeah. Also, portraiture, like posed person photography, it's so much about light balance because you are in control of everything happening. I just never could see the light in a space because it's very much the same kind of eye that a painter has to have.
Sure.
You have to see colors that we don't naturally perceive are there, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that's really intense. Did you do, like, in high school, were you taking pictures for your yearbook and newspaper and things like that?
No, and I never studied. But me and two of my friends, we took sort of like almost like community classes at the Knoxville Museum of Art that were like weekend classes. And essentially it was just someone showing us how to use a dark room. So me and my three friends, we would just we just had cameras with us and rolls of film, black and white, and we'd shoot throughout the week, each other messing around, being 16, 17 years old, just like being teenagers. And then we would take them to the dark room. And honestly, that was my favorite part, was not necessarily the shooting. It was the amount of control over an image that you have when you're working with a film in a dark room,
Mm-hmm.
which is now kind of where like I never really made the jump into digital because I kind of missed that. I missed the like turn off all the lights, the like big arm projector thing. I don't know. It was like a different vibe than sitting at your computer pointing and clicking.
Yeah, of course. Well, so we got to this movie through zombies and found footage, what we
Yes.
rolled on the die. And we've definitely gotten some
Check and
tons
check.
of suggestions from people on our Letterboxd account, but this was one going into it, because oftentimes when we get a great suggestion from a user on Letterboxd, it's a movie that we're like, oh, of course, yes,
Of course,
we
yeah.
absolutely need to do this film. Yes, this
We're
makes
like, I
sense.
totally forgot about that movie.
And this is a movie you and I had never heard of.
No?
I think we had put it on our own list, but only because it came up in probably Google searching for this
Yeah, I think
combo of
I think
things.
one of us found it and we're like, I don't know, zombie and mockumentary, here we
Why
go.
not?
But
And a
I don't think any more research was done beyond that.
And a bunch of people in the letterbox comments were like, Savageland, Savageland, Savageland.
Yeah.
Yeah, some like real nightmare fuel photography happening
Yeah.
in this movie, things like that. And it's pretty interesting. This is a movie, when I searched it on Rotten Tomatoes, had 0 critic score. It only had an
Yeah.
audience score. It is a very independent movie. And it feels very independent.
Yeah.
I almost did my intro based off of just what it means to be the spirit of an independent filmmaker
Sure.
and how
sure.
much this movie captures it. Because there's a lot in this movie that is clunky, raw, yes.
I would
But
say like the thing I was raw. This movie is pretty like rough and tumble.
uh-huh,
And when it hits, it does hit.
yes.
But overall, it does feel like an episode of Vice TV without the production value.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's, to me, like when I look back at old writing that I've done, or even current writing, like sometimes you write something that is raw, and
Yeah.
when you look back on it, I find stuff like that really exciting because
Yeah.
you're not limited by a studio giving you notes as to how to perfect continuity, let's say,
Oh,
or
sure.
storytelling or camera work, etc.
Mhm.
So the premise of Savageland, this is a tough, like, linear story to recap, but it is documentary style. It is about this tiny border town, Sangre de Cristo, SDC, in Arizona. And what we know from the get-go is there was some night where everyone in the town was viciously murdered.
Like 57 people
Mm-hmm.
in one night.
In one night.
All get murdered, like disemboweled, disembodied, fucking
Yeah.
dismembered, all the dis words, and then half of their body parts disappear or dragged out into the desert.
The news narration starts with they have found 12 bodies, but they think they have up to 20 now, which is a weird thing to say when you're like,
Yeah.
wait, how can you not find bodies?
Yeah.
Um,
And only one survivor.
yes, Francisco Salazar. And then they pound this point home. He is an illegal immigrant, quote unquote. They found him covered in blood, kind of catatonic near the border, which the town is near the border, but it is interesting that they point out he was trying to run south back across the border.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And yeah, right away, everyone from the sheriff to the radical right-leaning radio pundit to
Mhm.
the guys in the bar, they're all like, I mean, look at what those people are capable of. And this
Yeah.
is La Raza. You know, they're
Yeah.
coming in here to only people like them
Yeah.
can do that to our children.
Look at what they're doing to our children.
Hmm.
That couldn't happen in America.
And then we have a man who we'll later learn is Lawrence Ross Jr., who is an LA Times reporter, who is a black man and who is was looking into this case because he was like, there's very little national media coverage of this, and he's exploring what's happening. He says, so they had their killer, but then the photos emerged, and that changes everything.
Love it.
Teaser. I also love the people that they interview. This movie really is about all of the different people that get some screen time here, because you get to kind of watch their arc. And Lawrence Ross and the professional photographer, Lynn, what's his name?
Yeah, Lynn Matheson.
Yes. Those two guys go through a pretty wild arc, or not wild, like I think a really fascinating arc in this movie
Sure.
of where they land. So let's start with, we already introduced 38-year-old Francisco Salazar, undocumented laborer who's lived in SDC for 7 years. He is well known in Heinzman,
which is kind of like the whiter community.
Yeah, Heinzman is kind of the county seat of this border county. It is probably predominantly white. Sangre de Cristo is where a lot of the undocumented laborers work. So Heinzman is probably going to feel a little bit more suburban development-y type of thing, whereas SDC is a lot of lean-tos and very poor and run down. Missions. There's a mission being built there to help with these poor people who
Not anymore.
Nope, not anymore. It was being built. So, so that's to sort of understand the dynamic of these two towns, of Heinzman and SDC. Sheriff Pirano is the sheriff of the county, lives in Heinzman, and he is your classic, just big, tough.
He's a boss
white
hog.
Guy. He's boss hog.
He's boss hog, big daddy, all the way.
Yeah, and he is fomenting all of the hate toward Salazar. This is a tale as old as time, right? That you have the sheriff just wants to get the guy they caught in prison. Yeah. They want to get him the death penalty, and they want to move on to show that they're a hero, and we do not tolerate vicious murderers like Francisco Salazar, who managed to murder 57 people in like 6 hours.
Yeah. And then he's the only one who got away. We found blood on him. Naturally, he's the murderer. I will hear no further questions. I have an explanation for everything. This movie does a lot really well. And this movie does other things that I'm like, okay, all right. And I think the sort of this character and his deputy as the sort of like right wing mouthpiece of the police. I was like, can we have just like one more depth to the onion? Is there like one more layer to the onion we could add to them? So it's not quite so, I'm a big racist sheriff. Like you're like, okay, you're right, you're racist sheriff. Gotcha. Oh, that's what we're getting. Okay, big plate of racist sheriff. Here we go. Like that was one. And I think as an interesting kind of foil to Lawrence, and I think Lawrence was really interesting to me because he has kind of an arc where he's like, I'm a black man from LA. I report on, as he said, whatever the Los Angeles Times didn't want to touch. I was like, oh, okay. Inside, underground news, he's written books, and then he kind of ties in, reporting on sundown towns, the Ku Klux Klan being active in Arizona as through the 1950s and 60s. And so he has a point of view that naturally is a foil to, Sheriff Pirano. But then as the story goes, Pirano just sounds like a wackadoo.
Yeah.
Because he's literally jumping through mental hoops trying to explain what the fuck happened.
There's part of me that's like, I don't like this kind of the ham-handedness of the political storytelling of what's happening here.
This is the far, far right. This is the far, far left.
Yes.
And the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Right.
And it probably includes zombies.
I think it's and I think storytelling, because the thing that I felt watching this last night, this 2015 movie that was probably filmed earlier than that.
Sure. Oh yeah. I mean, this probably
Much
took like quite a while to make.
Yeah, so I imagine they were probably shooting this close to 2012-ish.
Sure. Hmm.
But watching it in 2025 eyes,
Yeah.
and you watch the iconoclasm happening in the
Yeah.
sheriff's department, happening with Gus Greer, the
Yep.
Alex Jones-ish
Yep.
conservative talk show host, the conservative talk show host in this area. It isn't unlike watching Trump and Elon
No.
Musk and whoever
No.
else, and Joe Rogan and all of these
Yeah.
other mouthpieces.
It's all the like build the wall crowd that we got the Trump part one.
You say the crazy shit out loud, and people still keep
Yeah.
filing in behind you. That said, this movie, I think, realistically captures that type of mentality.
Sure.
It just makes it hard to watch sometimes, because storytelling doesn't necessarily need to be realistic
Yeah.
to be compelling. And so sometimes it's less compelling when I see less depth of what's happening, as you just said.
Yeah.
But it definitely touches those buttons, and it adds to the scare factor and the unease you feel in this movie.
The other thing I want to say about this kind of intro is I kind of wish that they had like reserved some of the carnage,
Uh-huh.
because it's like this movie comes at you hard in the beginning. Like I said, it feels very much like watching a TV show where they're like, you know how TV is like, we're trying to hook you in the first 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start the story. And it's like, this town is painted in blood. And I was like, oh man, well, I guess we've seen all the bad stuff. Like I was like eke it out, you
Yeah.
know, like give it to us little by little. Like, you know, when we get like maybe a shot or two, but not like, because everything is bloody.
Yeah.
Because what I liked about this movie later on is the sort of like ghost town aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's actually one of the things I think this movie captured really well, that I personally find scary as fuck about the American Southwest Desert, is like the emptiness. Like empty do abandoned buildings covered with plastic wrap scare you? Because they do me.
Uh-huh.
This movie's got a lot of them.
Yeah.
So like I wish it was more suggestive rather than representative. You know, like they're like, look at this big pile of blood with a child's shoe upon it.
Yeah.
What happened here? And I'm like, well, I guess because we're probably not going to see it. So now we've seen it.
I think it's about the halfway point when it finally finds its rhythm as a
Yes.
movie.
Well, it's once you get to the photography.
Yeah, because they wait until they tease out the photos, but they show you all of the carnage in the streets. And the first half really is about setting up the racist tone of this town and
the court case
the corruptness of that.
And again, like it feels very like, oh no, the Latino man can't get a fair trial in the state of Arizona.
Yeah. And to be fair to this movie, I think putting this out in 2015,
Yeah.
all of this was true in 2015.
Oh, sure.
The Trumps and the Joe Rogans and that of the world have existed for so long, but it wasn't until after 2016 on into 2020, especially with the BLM movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, and that we started having like mainstream, like where your aunt in Sarasota,
It wasn't
or your
turned up
uncle
on
in
Fox
Des Moines,
News all the time. Yeah.
that people understood what institutional or systemic racism was. And so to be fair to this movie, I don't think in 2015 we were having mainstream conversations about what this movie is talking about. 2025 me is like, yeah, no, I got this. You can.
Yeah. You don't have to spoon feed this to me. You're like, and it's also, I think they also hold back kind of one of their other cards, which is Francisco Salazar. Like they kind of describe they tease out what happens to this man. So following the events of the night, this guy,
Uh-huh.
Francisco, uh, walks like 12 miles outside of town, passes out, gets picked up by a freight trucker
Uh-huh.
and fly, kind of like picks him up, takes him into the cab, and takes him back. And he immediately is arrested
Yes.
for killing 57 people. But later, oh no, sorry. And then Salazar is then interviewed in jail.
Mm-hmm.
And the interview is kind of like chopped up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So like we're not given any clues in the beginning. Like he's non-communicative. I really liked the sort of psychologist. I think she was actually a really great character
Yeah.
because
Renee Davies.
yeah, like she's the most neutral. She's like, I'm here to do a job. Listen, like in the middle of this sort of seething racist cop town, they're like, don't you want to, like, we can chain him to the wall? And she's like, you have guns. You're right outside. Like, I'm trying to get him to respond to
I
anything.
want him to open up. So
Yeah.
if shit goes down, come in with your guns, I
Yeah.
guess.
But I think she does like kind of the most neutral character. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for that reason, I was most interested in what she had to say.
Agreed. Yeah, there's a lot of weird pacing things because it's not until about halfway through where we realize that kind of our narrator of the story is Carlos Olivares,
Yes.
who is
Yes.
the retired Border Patrol agent.
Yeah.
He is the son of a Border Patrol agent. He was a
Hmm.
Border Patrol agent for 30 years. He looks like he's maybe 50, which
Yeah.
is really interesting too. And and this is the guy who's kind of the one person in the talking head thing that gets Salazar's what happened to like he is open to
Yeah.
the idea that the crazy shit Salazar is suggesting happened really
Yeah.
did happen.
Because he's our boots on the ground ghost tour, zombie tour narrator.
Yes.
Because Lawrence Ross finds him to be like, hey, I'm an outsider. You grew up in this town or near this town. You know this area. Walk me through it.
Yeah.
And then it really does feel like a downtown ghost tour.
Yeah, it does. And it's that second half where we get the map of
Yeah.
SDC. We see Salazar's route through town.
Hmm.
We start it becomes a procedural.
Yeah.
Again, we have another procedural film.
Yes.
And it becomes we have to piece together what really went down here. And that's where I got really interested in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I thought if I had known less about Salazar
Mhm,
and less
mhm.
about the sheriff and just got to this, I think I would have been along for more of a suspenseful ride.
Sure. And then like the little pieces of like, oh wait, so you like introduce the cop, but then you're like, maybe this guy isn't like so like little things he says kind of start poking out.
Yeah.
Or, then you're like, oh, that doesn't sound like like the bumbling lawyer. I was like, this guy, come on.
This guy is amazing.
He's like, I mean, there's a recording of him in jail. Why would I use that?
The teenage attorney is one of the funniest characters in this
I
movie.
love it.
Yeah.
But also, I'm also like, come on.
There's a lot of political cartooning here.
Yes, I think that's it.
It is really what it is. And I love what the movie is criticizing. I love its political cartoons sentiment, but like a political cartoon, it is pretty direct. In fact, there are several moments where political cartoons are used.
Are actually used. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple things about SDC. This is all out of order when you learn this, but the title Savageland comes from these like cutaway interviews with these like really racist old, not all old, a lot of them are young too, just these guys at a bar who are really always talking about La Raza and the Mexican gangs, and then it gets into the illegals, and then it just gets into just Mexicans or just anyone
really
crossing
like,
a border.
Like really, it's like they took our jobs.
Yeah.
Like really.
And there's a moment where some guy is like, a lot of, you grew up around here, you don't even know how to pronounce the name of that town. You're like, Sanger to Christa, the Sanger to can't even say a
So we
Spanish
just
word
called it Savageland.
because that's where the savages live. And you're like, wow, there it is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So there's that. And there's a lot of discussion from Deputy DeLuca, the sheriff's deputy, who's just like, oh, the smuggling and human trafficking and gangs, like the crime down here is out of control. And it's Olivares, the retired Border Patrol officer, who's like, yeah, I actually worked along the border, and you would
Mm-hmm.
regularly see people who died crossing because of exposure of the conditions. And you occasionally would see somebody who maybe was shot, who was murdered. Maybe you would see somebody who died of exposure and was eaten by a mountain lion or something.
Yeah.
But the last several years, I started seeing, and it became too much because no one would talk about it. I started seeing bodies shredded in a way that scavenger animals don't do that.
This is one of the things that after I finished this film and I was thinking about it, I was like, I wish we had gone deeper
Uh-huh.
into the befores and afters of SDC.
Yeah.
Like like the larger picture of what really happened. And it kind of like really all we get at the very end is like a map
Yeah.
and a little video. And I was like, come on, like we're gonna leave it totally like zombies just out of nowhere? Nothing? You give
Yep.
us nothing?
It's
And
got
I
the,
think
yeah.
that's where I was like, okay, so like, and maybe if there had been like kind of a hint, any kind of like a I don't need it spoon fed to me, but just like a little something of like something had shifted in something or other, like either in Mexico, on the border, in, in Arizona, a hint.
Yes. This is structured as a political documentary, it's
Yeah,
agitprop, it's that sort of thing, and it's not structured as a horror film
sure,
wherein you do need to build your characterizations of people so that you can
sure.
feel the tension and tragedy.
When I'm
But
thinking of, like classic zombie films that
mhm,
are, like think movies like The Crazies, Night of the Living Dead, in which you don't really learn why there are zombies. You're really just watching how people react to the
uh-huh.
zombie is the most interesting thing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're like it's a little too removed
I
because we only
found
see
yeah.
one person react to these zombies,
Well, and
and we don't.
that's a
That's
great
it.
point. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, which I really like the intellectual part of me, not the part of me that wants to watch a good zombie movie or found
Sure,
footage movie. The part of me that's really interested in just thinking about things to
sure, yeah,
I was really fascinated that there's no moment where you see anyone get attacked
no,
because it's
not
all
at
in
all.
still photos.
Yes, we're gonna get to that.
Well, I
Yeah,
guess we get to the epilogue, but whatever.
yeah,
But you don't see an attack. You don't see people fighting zombies other than in these still photos.
no,
So all you get is the aftermath and the
yes,
descriptions of the horror and the misinterpretation of what they're looking at
yeah.
because of their racism. And all of that, I think, is incredibly fascinating, very thought-provoking,
Yeah.
interesting, as you say, and as I agree. It makes for like clunky storytelling and a movie that's a little hard to get into. Uh, but when it finds its rhythm, it's fun.
It's like watching a war movie in which you never see the battle. You're just watching people talk about the battle,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
and that's how a lot of documentaries are because you almost never
Yeah.
have footage of the thing that went
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
But that's why a movie like the opening of Saving Private Ryan is so compelling because we've seen kind of newsreel footage of the
Hmm.
attack, but it
Hmm.
doesn't give you
Like
any
boots on the
sense of
ground.
yeah, boots on the ground. And so when you can fictionalize it but make it authentic looking, that really humanizes it. And here we
Mhm.
don't get that. We're really what this is about is how do you interpret a life after it's gone?
Sure.
And
Oh,
when
yeah,
you
yeah,
run
yeah.
through the filters of what do you think about these people? Because we do note that of all of these people who died, in who all of these people who died who were residents of SDC, none of them got an obituary. The
I
only
know.
obituary was for the one white guy from Heinzman who was driving through town and was one of the
Yeah.
first people killed. So, yeah, so how do you filter an interpretation of the deceased when you're so crazy racist, or you live in an area that is dominated by that sort of thinking? So it becomes very clear to us from the get-go that, like, we know from the get-go that Salazar is not guilty of this
Sure.
because
It makes no sense.
as Lawrence Ross says, like, the trial framed him and somehow successfully convicted him as like just a one-man killing machine that could murder 57 people. There's interviews with family members of the dead who were like, if this man were going through town murdering people, my uncle died in that town. My uncle would have taken no shit.
Oh,
Like, if
yeah.
he confronted
Yeah.
my uncle would have fought him tooth and nail. Maybe he would have killed him, but my uncle would have done damage to him.
The fact that they found bite marks on many of the bodies,
Uh-huh.
none of the bite marks match Salazar's dental,
No.
and Salazar is bitten. Certainly wasn't biting himself.
Nope.
So they do find blood on him, and they're like, well, boom, 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 case done. And then also the idea of like the sort of silent witness, the silent victim. He never says a word in the trial. He never speaks up for himself. When he, this one piece of evidence that is him describing what happened to the psychologist is never admitted in court.
Uh-huh.
So he gets his trial. There's like kind of the classic trope of the like blurred out, voice deepened inside copy jury foreman that's like, it took 30 minutes to come back with a verdict of guilty, and honestly, we think that was even too long.
Yeah, and his I really loved a moment where they talked about trying to do forensics on the bodies because they said, they really didn't have many bodies. I think they said 17 bodies they could really say this is a single body. But they said, how do you do DNA tests on 20 square blocks of bloody sand?
Yeah, yeah.
And they say they actually found at least 15 different people's blood on Salazar too, because of all of the splatter. And so I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about the way information gets muddied.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, coming our last Patreon film was the autopsy of Jane Doe. And I think one of the things that we and, the people that were in on that conversation really, really loved about that movie is the specificity of it, the like watching an expert get really specific about something in their job. And I kind of wish that we had gotten this. And I think maybe this is also connected to the sort of like, don't show me the big bloody mess of a town up front. Tease it out. And I kind of wish that we had some sort of like, because we sort of get like pictures of, autopsy reports sort of flashed in front of the camera, but that's it. Like, I kind of wish we had had a conversation with somebody who's like trying to make sense of this mess.
Yeah.
And be like, well, here we have this leg.
Yeah.
Like really trying to piece the thing together rather than watching an institution throw up its hands, going to be like, I don't know, racism?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think I wanted to believe in the sheriff and the deputy more, to be like, I understand why they're doing this. It seems a little bit racist.
Like maybe they were trying to figure out who did it.
Yeah.
But then they're like, well, I guess this is the best option we have.
And also, we do have the person to walk us through everything that happened, which is Olivares. It's just the way it gets doled out there. The way this was edited was just, as we said, clunky. I do want to talk briefly about the attorney that he has, which is this like 20-year-old man who, as they say, it was only his third ever trial that he had done. He very much, the moment we meet him, he's like, well, I've never felt that we have any type of like, the court is the court. It is the true arbiter of justice, and there's no
Yeah.
sense that there's going to be any racism involved in the court.
Yeah.
I'm just here to defend my client to the best of my abilities, and it is this like noble naivete, this
Yeah.
naifish.
Like why would external forces, cultural forces, influence anything that happens in a courtroom? That's wild. That's not in the law books.
That's right. We don't, you know what? I think Trump has learned his lesson. We don't need to further
I,
prosecute him for any
I
of
think
this
we're
stuff.
fine. He said he didn't do it, so
Yeah,
he didn't.
we're just making it worse by making him mad. No need
I
to make him
know.
mad. So yeah, that's what this attorney is like, and he is like comically maddening throughout this.
Yeah.
Almost maybe the worst person in this film,
Yeah.
and I love him. And so, yeah, he's absolutely useless. Okay, so we also need to talk about, we get introduced to Lynn Matheson, who is played by Len Wein, which I only know through the trivia, but I was like, this man is familiar
Okay.
looking to me. And it may just be because he so perfectly looks like a classic old photographer.
I
You
mean,
know
he
what I
looks
mean?
the part,
He
right?
100% looks and
Like
acts the
you're
part.
somebody who came back from Vietnam.
Yes. He's a comic book writer. He is the inventor of the character Wolverine.
Oh my God. Okay.
So that's who plays.
Wow.
So he's Len Wein, and he just took the last name Matheson because he loved the writer Richard Matheson.
Okay.
Yeah. I Am Legend, you know?
Yeah.
Well, he's great. He's so good at this part. I love him. Maybe my favorite actor in this movie. And yeah, because his whole take is I was brought into this documentary. I don't know shit about this town. I don't know shit about
Yeah.
this guy. I don't know the politics. All I know is what it means to be a photographer, how to take good pictures. This guy definitely was a photographer. Like, is he great? Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be in a museum, but like, he obviously has a photographer's eye.
Hmm.
You know, he liked taking pictures of roadkill
Yeah.
and sometimes kids. The daughter of this family he worked for, and yeah, he's good. Like yeah, good stuff.
And it's not only is he good, but he's also, these photos are not tampered with.
Yes, yes. He also
That's like kind of
clarifies.
the
Yeah.
yeah, like he's very much like, listen, when because we kind of get, Doc Boss Hog, sheriff is like, there's ways that you could put your face on the hill, that the grassy knoll that killed JFK, and you'd never even know the difference with this deep fakes that they got going on,
Yeah, yeah.
And then this guy Len is like, listen, there's certain things that we look for. These photos don't have those things. Like, these have in no way have been edited.
And also, we're looking at photo negatives too. Like
Yeah.
to be able to doctor a photo
See?
negative is crazy.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, back when I was talking about being a photographer, I'm like, that's kind of the real thing that I loved about like true, like, black and white film photography, is like, when you have the negative, that's it.
Yeah,
That's it. And you can do a lot of stuff to like zoom in, zoom out, adjust lighting and stuff like that. But like, the image is the image. You can't just like, could you just like edit out this person behind me? Or like, could you just change the direction of my face? It's like, you have to, it's, the picture is the picture.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And you can do a lot once you print that negative. You can
Sure.
shade certain things.
yeah.
You can change the light balance. You can take a person out of it, crop it, whatever. But yeah, and so he's there to say all of that. Which I'll bring him up now, and then we'll talk about his arc and where we get with him at the end of this. I think we should probably jump to. We should probably jump to
What
actual
happened that
process. Yeah. One other thing I wanted to say. Oh, I wanted to add with Lawrence Ross, along with Lynn Matheson, these two characters that I found their arcs really interesting. You know, Ross is taking one of the things he mentions kind of early in this, and as you said, adding on to what you said earlier about he is trying to find the stories that the LA Times doesn't want to report
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
He talks about, he was like, you cannot forget the state of Arizona embraced the KKK
Yeah.
during Reconstruction.
Yeah.
And it's like, throughout American history and still to today, people of color rarely get a fair trial.
Sure.
And so that's where he's coming from. It's important.
And especially it's the, law and order during the day, but community justice at night.
Yes.
Under hoods.
Yeah. So the kind of turning point when we get kind of a more linear narrative happens when Ross says, I had been trying to reach out for a while to this truck driver, Mario Rio, who had picked up Salazar. He would never, ever return my calls, never wanted to talk about it. And then after he was convicted and sentenced to death, Salazar was,
yeah.
And then the appeal was declined. The appeal got defeated. That guy finally called me back, said, listen, I finally found this under the seats in my cab. I don't know what it is. I'm going to send it to you. I don't want to hear about it. I'm done.
I don't want anything to do with it. Yeah.
And then inexplicably, this poor man just dies in a
And then he dies a week later, hitting nothing at all. Like as a one vehicle crash.
I really hated that. It was like, you guys are building so much cool momentum. I love this guy. And then because the moment you die after turning over evidence, that is the plot line of like a witness that has to be silenced by some conspiracy. The zombies didn't. This is not Zombie Mob.
Yeah. And they never even pursue the idea of like going further into his, and it's, I think it did kind of hint. It was like, the Hinsman policemen were the first on the scene. And the deputy was kind of like awarded above and beyond the call of duty commendation, which kind of hints at that they shut this guy up by killing him.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting. Well, they get this roll of film. It is a single roll of film of 36 exposures. He managed to get, as is common, then you got 37 out of it. And anyways, so we're going to go through these photos. And as Olivares tells us, this was kind of like a timeline showing his path through town through the course of the night. He had this one camera, just kept taking pictures all the way through town.
And it's a map in space and in time.
Yes. Yeah.
And we kind of get, like sort of now we're going back into like when Salazar is a little more communicative in telling his stories. Like he starts the timeline loading film into his camera when I can't remember the guy's name, but
Danny Montez
shows up as his somebody bloody shows up at his door as he's like putting the film into the camera.
Yeah, and Danny Montez, 17 years old, was his first victim, as they framed in the trial.
Yes.
That he showed up, he was already bleeding bad, and Salazar laid him down on his couch, and he said, I watched him die. He was dead. He tells this to Renee Davies, the social worker, who is the only person to get him to talk at all. But Renee in the interview was like, but then you said he stood up and came at you. And he was like, he did.
Yep. That's what happened.
And how did you stop him? Well, I held him and then I hurt him. How did you hurt him, Francisco? And
Smash cut to a shot of a pickaxe.
And Olivares says there was never a question that he struck Danny Montez's body 37 times with a pickaxe.
Yeah.
The question is, did he kill him? Which is a great line. Incredible.
I love
line.
it.
So then he took his first photo once he had this zombie interaction with Danny. He took a photo of the mountains in the south horizon.
I love this.
So
this is where I'm like, thank you all for recommending this movie, because really once the photographs get involved, the sort of the procedural of looking through static images for clues.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Lake Mungo in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Was it Lake Mungo? Yeah. Where it's like we're looking through old footage our eyes are like scanning the image looking for it, and we're like, are those people on the hills? Like 6 or 7 people on the hills?
Yeah.
What are they doing up there?
Yeah.
Why are they heading towards me?
The most creeped out I ever got, well, not most, but up there when I was a kid. I remember watching like afternoon TV show, Latchkey Kids Unite, and I was watching Geraldo Rivera, I believe it was, and he had a whole talk show one afternoon about people who had claimed to have seen ghosts.
Okay, sure.
And so they would bring on photos,
Yes.
and seeing photos of just there's like you can just start to make out a face in the darkness
Yeah.
over someone's shoulder. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely not. No, thank you, sir.
You know, I've taken a photo of a ghost, right?
Oh, have you? Have I
Yeah.
seen? I don't think I've seen this photo.
I think I showed you guys.
Maybe.
It
I
was
forget everything that happens in my life.
That's okay. Same. No, it was the first time we played the theater in not Northampton, in England. Um, oh crap,
Union Chapel.
Newcastle.
Oh,
Newcastle.
Newcastle. Oh, yes, yes.
So old theater, and I was up wandering around, and the auditorium was completely empty, and I was like snapping pictures again of the architecture because I like the architecture of old ass theaters. And then later the next day, I was looking through them, and there is a gray figure sitting in one of the chairs
Unbelievable.
that was absolutely not there. Now, is it a light, some sort of trick of the light? Is it a ghost? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that is like the only time that I was like, huh, that's that does kind of look like a person seated in a chair.
Yeah. I hope they like the show.
I same.
I hope they didn't shout boo.
Boo.
That means they
Haunting me
like it
to
when a
this day.
ghost says
That's it. They're like, boo.
Yeah.
No, good boo. And I think, okay, so this is where I think what sets this movie apart from a lot of other quote unquote found footage films is that rather than watching a VHS, a digital, shaky cam, handy cam, we've recovered this footage, we've tried to piece it together, like the usual suspects of found footage. It's flat photographic image. And I think there's something about it that maybe it's just appealing that it appeals to like a pre-digital age of this is all you get. Like you get 36 shots. That's what you get. And I like when Len is like, that's the thing, is like some of them are going to be shit. But then every once in a while you get an image that perfectly works. Somehow the light works out, the movement works out, the framing, and you see exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about that you don't get when you're looking at handy cam, shaky cam footage.
Uh-huh.
That you kind of have to like your brain has to tell the rest of the story. And also shout out to like the photography in this film
Yeah.
because this shit is scary.
It's very, very good. I saw that they originally tried to shoot these on film,
Okay.
like with a film camera, and then eventually they had to use digital just to
Yeah,
get
I
the
did notice there
exact
was some
look.
like, yeah, there was only like one shot where I was like, that zombie's face is definitely digitally altered. Like that person is missing an eyeball and it looks like, you know, when you can tell the black is too black.
Yep.
Because in black and white film, you learn black and white is actually just many, many, many shades of gray. But in digital, you can achieve true black.
Yep.
And sometimes it gets a little true black. But the thing that struck me most about these images is like the movement tells a story. And it reminded me so much of the paintings of Francis Bacon. Take a quick Google. I'll wait while you Google. But Francis Bacon had a tendency to paint images, usually of very powerful looking men in suits, seated in an architectural space.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
their faces, their bodies were blurred as if they were in motion, but not like moving towards something like I'm going to reach and get this glass, as in like they are blurred out of existence or half existing, which I think is a really lovely metaphor for this zombie attack.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
alive,
yeah.
but not alive.
Absolutely.
They're
Absolutely.
themselves, but not themselves. They are blurred versions of themselves.
Yeah, these are haunting.
Oh
Wow.
my God. Like when you see a Francis Bacon painting in a museum, it's fucking terrifying. And oftentimes there's like meat involved. Like it's like there's like one that I've seen quite often. I think it's at the Met. It's like a man sitting in a chair. There's just like two sides of beef on either side of him. So like beautiful, creepy, haunting shit. And these photographs really reminded me of that.
The oh, I found the sides of beef. It is, yeah, the name of the painting is Head Surrounded by Sides of Beef. That would work well in like a children's room
In the nursery.
in the nursery.
No,
Yeah.
I'm putting that shit right in the foyer. Right in the foyer. Like
Oh,
walk in the door, bam, beef.
thank you for
You've got
introducing me.
beefed.
So Salazar, after he discovers, Salazar seems like they never say it explicitly. In fact, they never say the word zombie in this movie.
No,
It's a
they
little like
don't.
Midnight Mass where we
I
don't
love
know
it.
what a vampire
Too
is.
classy to say the word.
Yep. Well, Salazar knows there's a zombie attack 'cause he just got attacked by one, and he looks out, takes the picture of the horizon of people running at him. We get the sense that these are Train to Busan style fast zombies.
Yes. And I love that Oliveira says, based on the light, we can estimate that it's about 15 minutes till dusk. And I'm like, oh,
Thank you.
procedural. Like, again, it's like we're having to like triangulate. We're like, okay, if we
Yeah.
look at the shadow on the hill, we can tell it's
The next
almost dusk.
the next person he runs into is Ron Tem- Ron Templeton, a white guy from Heinzman, who is driving his truck south, and Salazar flags him down. Why did you flag him down? They ask. He's like, because I knew he owned a gun.
Yeah.
And so we see a photo of Ron out of his truck holding his rifle, looking a little like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like
Like
why
he's
are
taken
you
by
flagging me
surprise.
down?
Yeah.
Photo 3 is Rob or Ron shooting at the zombies in the distance. And photo 4 is Ron being overrun by the zombies.
He is being chomped.
They never found Ron's body. All that was left was his pickup and like just a trail of blood dragged away.
And the gun. Like, and I
And the
think find the
gun.
gun on the ground. I think the widow, his widow, is a really interesting story
Agreed.
because she's the one who's like, listen, we live in Hensman. He's a beloved member of this community. He's a hunter. Like he's one shot, one kill, Ron, you know?
Yeah.
So the fact that this guy, Francisco Salazar, who's like kind of a shorter, smaller guy, would overwhelm him, my husband, with a fucking hunting rifle seems ludicrous.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense because, Ron was 6'1", 210,
Yeah.
great shot, and I think they say Salazar was like 5'9" and, maybe 150 pounds. And so they're like, that makes zero sense. And she's actually, through her tears, she's great, a really great actor, really great work here, but kind of through her tears, she's questioning if they're lying to her. And it's hard for her to fathom what to do with the information. But
And
it
it's
also seems clear that she's never seen these photos either, that they
No.
have successfully
No.
hidden these photos.
Yeah, and that's where like kind of the conspiracy, the deeper conspiracy that's not so deep in this movie, it does get kind of scary because you now start to see things like her neighbors are probably the sheriff, the deputy.
Uh-huh.
They're like straight up lying to her face
Yeah.
about what they might have found to comfort her.
Yeah.
And we're watching her question that. Like, these are my next door neighbors. And now they want to either shut me up or believe something that seems kind of impossible
Yeah.
if you believe in zombies.
Right. So Olivares tells us that Salazar, through the map, we can see him. He lived on the outskirts of town, the southern part, and he's running north through town. He kind of got into the center of town, which is where a lot of the action was happening.
Feeding frenzy.
So photos 5 through like 20 are just a wide array of like, here's zombie in the brush. Here's a face attacking man. Here's just a face you barely make out. Here's some glowing eyes. Here looks like a zombie campfire dance party. Just all kinds of. I think
know,
that's
right?
what this
Absolutely.
photo is. Yeah. So, yeah, and these are great, really great photos. Super wide array of beautiful and creepy happening in these pictures.
It's something about like the glowing eyes ones. And again, I think it's, again, like the brush photo. That was one that was like, ooh, I don't like this.
And so we go back to Lynn Matheson, the photographer, who says, I was a photographer in Nam. And he says, the thing is, when you're a photographer, I can understand why people are confused about why Salazar kept taking pictures during a disaster, why he wasn't helping people. One, there's a good chance he was nowhere near the violence because
he's got a zoom lens.
Two, as a photographer, you feel indestructible.
Yeah.
He says, I'm terrified of heights. Like just looking out my second floor window, I get dizzy. But when I was in Vietnam during the war, I would sit on a edge of an open-doored helicopter holding on to a strap I wouldn't even use as a belt, just taking pictures of below. You feel it. You cannot be killed if you are a photographer. You are indestructible is this kind of feeling that he puts out there, which I think is a really kind of interesting and kind of cool metaphor for like the description of the feeling you feel when you are a photographer.
Sure. And it's not just when you're a photographer. I think we can kind of extrapolate that to like a larger sense in that you're compartmentalizing what you see. There's literally a screen between you and what's happening. And as long as you're looking through that little viewfinder, you're removed through a tiny little screen, and therefore you're not part of it. And what's interesting is that when now in the sort of the digital age, how we're so like we all have these little pocket cameras in our pockets all the times. And like, kind of the thing of like people watching concerts through their phone. So like we're kind of now like it's not just the photographer's eye. It's like everyone does this.
Yeah.
A lot more in everyday life.
Yeah. And also I think it speaks to I think that's the main thing is the framing of the screen, but also I think it speaks to having a specific task to perform in an extreme situation. So like soldiers, one way in which soldiers are able to go into danger, into situations where they probably theoretically know there's a great chance they will die.
Oh, yeah.
Is because they have a very specific task. Just do the task. EMTs rushing into an earthquake area or fire area or something like that. I just know I see ahead what I need to deal with, and I'm just going to go deal with that. And a photographer being the same sort of thing, that if you just stay focused on the task at hand, you're not thinking about whether or not you're going to die.
Yeah, it goes back to the story that you told in the beginning of, people on a plane, we're all going to die. Why are you taking photos? Because it focuses your attention literally on anything other than we're all going to die.
Yeah. I have to do this one thing for all of us. So we get this. There's a story here too from Olivares about how Salazar's path through town. That one, he stops at the Desert Mart.
Okay.
He stops at the Desert Mart because it had a working landline.
Yes.
I find this passage really interesting, but like not really helping the story narrative.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot happening. So like one, really what's interesting to me was he says, at this time, this happened in 2011. If this, as Lynn says, if this had happened in New York City, we would have so much footage of it because everyone has a cell phone. And as Olivares says, these people don't have cell phones.
Yeah, most people don't.
And so you go to the Desert Mart, buy a phone card, use the payphone, call home internationally and say, hey, Mom, I'm doing all right, blah, 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 miss you too. And then we also get Lawrence Ross chimes in. He says also people are like, why do immigrants never call the police? Why didn't they call the
Right.
police in this situation? He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
immigrants don't call the police.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're part of the enemy.
Yeah. However,
Uh-huh.
it's one of those things where like there's no CCTV footage. Like there's nothing like we can't bring in any kind of outside like any other perspective. I like the purity of the only evidence we have is this one roll of film. However,
Uh-huh.
there's no other way that we could bring in another narrative thread here.
I think this falls into the same line as earlier when Len is explaining or talking about the photos on this roll being
Mhm.
like the fact that almost every photo is pure and good. There's
Yeah.
only maybe 2 or 3 that didn't turn out
That are like black, most, yeah,
black.
yeah, too smudge.
He kind of belabors the point of like this is almost too perfect, and it feels like the filmmaker's apologizing
Yeah,
for the
it's a
conceit
device.
of this. And
It's
I'm
a
like, don't
device.
apologize for the conceit.
No, yeah,
It's a horror movie. It's just a movie. There's
yeah,
a million conceits. If there weren't conceits in like Ocean's 11 that were
yeah,
unrealistic, we would be doing heists in Vegas all the time.
yeah. Wait, I can't just. There's no training montage.
No,
It's not going to just cut to a training montage
no.
like jazzy music.
So there's also a story about the water tower.
I love it. This is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So Salazar is in like the middle of town, but like a mile and a half away, like on the outskirts of town, there's this water tower, and that's a site where they found quite a few bodies,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like a complete family, like mom, dad, kid, like teenage son, children, kind of thing, and they something scared them up the water tower
Mm-hmm.
and then they jumped off the water tower to their demise.
Yes.
And I think it's like a surviving relative is like, now, why would a man, even with a man with a shotgun, lone shooter kind of theory, why would they pitch themselves off this fucking water tower?
Why wouldn't they overpower him? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't they
Yeah,
attack?
there's like 8 bodies that they find at this site.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of a cool because there's I don't know, it's just we're getting into the zombie movie thing of it's more about what humanity does, what an individual does when confronted with the zombie.
Mm-hmm.
That's the drama. That's like what opens up the zombie genre and makes it interesting. Who's a hero? Who's a villain? Who's a coward? Has the useful death? Who is completely useless? Who is, and
Yeah.
this is where we get into this like, and because we have 2 families that kind of take this route, as
Uh-huh.
we say, and this one seems like oh fuck, we're being overrun. We're gonna jump to our deaths below, and it seems human. It seems very relatable because listen, I don't want to get chomped by zombies and
No.
have bits and pieces of me dragged out into the desert. You jump, you're dead, the end. Versus what happens in the church seems much more shady.
This Putnam family thing is so ludicrous. You know what it is? They chose to run the audio, and the audio is creepy, but it just feels like a totally different movie.
Yeah.
And also, okay, so we need to set
Let's
this
get to
up.
the Putnams. Let's get
There's
to
the
the church.
Putnam. It's the Putnam family. It's Mr. and Mrs. Putnam and their 2 kids. Their youngest is Grace Putnam, who's like a blonde-headed 7-year-old girl.
Yeah.
So Francisco Salazar worked for them, helped with them. They were from this kind of like evangelical church, the Putnams were. They were building a mission in SDC because there was no mission down there, and they were this kind of like dedicated to people on the fringes of society. We need to help them. It seems like at their heart, it is evangelical, but they're trying to do good things
Sure.
for this community. And they were very close to Salazar. He did odd jobs for them. They helped him out. They paid him. They did stuff. He took care of their kids. They gave him a key to their
E to the,
house
yeah.
anytime he wanted to be there, which kind of defeats the evidence that he kicked open the doors to get to them. Or like he
Hmm.
had a key. He wouldn't have had to do that
Yeah.
if he really was going to kill them. But that's the setup for this kind of white Christian-y family.
And we're getting a lot of footage, like VHS footage of like the kids running through sprinklers, a
And little
fourth birthday party,
right,
the most wholesome of the wholesome.
totally. And it was clear to Olivares that Salazar didn't actually go within 3 blocks of the water tower. If you look at the timing
Yeah.
of the evening, he actually was headed toward the mission because the Putnams were staying there because they were working on this church. They had their daughter.
Hmm.
They had their daughter Grace was actually in the preschool.
Yeah.
But Salazar runs to the mission first. And he doesn't describe what he finds there, but we see a lot of photos of things, and then we hear audio of Mr. Dwayne Putnam. Did he call somebody to what
He
is
called his minister back in Colorado.
okay.
That's where I'm like, huh? Like, this is like, I'm going to die like my last confessional. I'm going to call
Don't judge me.
like, oh my God, where's Grace? Where's Grace?
We
And also,
shall be clean.
this is where I'm like, oh, okay. This is creepy, but this is where it was like, it's creepy because it's a creepy voice
Yeah.
rather than the situation of I'm locked in a closet. I've just killed most of my family
Yeah.
and the zombies are coming. That's creepy. That's like as an actor, that's the setup, the what it is, rather than a like campfire voice, which is kind of what we get a little bit. Because and also this monologue is bananas. Like,
It's
where's
so
Grace?
bonkers. Yeah.
It also took me this is because I'm a dummy. It took me a minute to remember that their child's name was Grace.
Mhm.
I was like, I was thinking like, where's the grace of God in light of what I'm seeing?
Which I think is the double play here.
Yes,
Yeah.
like hell is empty and all the devils are here kind of thing. But then I was like, oh shit, oh yeah, their daughter. Okay, right. And then he goes into this, no one can judge me. I am Abraham. And you're like, oh, he done killed his family.
And my thought was, I really didn't like that they took the Putnams away from us as friends to Salazar.
Right.
Because the idea was I liked believing in the Putnams as friends of Salazar, like
Yes.
reasonable people
Yeah.
that were evangelical and trying to help
Yeah.
and loved him. And I also even liked the idea that Mr. Putnam, like the people on the water tower, killed his own family in
Mhm.
a desperate bid to save them from
Yeah.
whatever this was. And there's a good chance that he might have believed them to be demons if he's truly deeply evangelical.
Yeah.
That like maybe my only way to salvation is through the death of all of us by my hand.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have just wondered what went through his mind there.
Yeah.
Because I think what they're getting at, which they do overly effectively, is that the Putnams then are taken off the map of respectable people
Yeah.
because of the murder-suicide quality of what it is. But in my mind, when we see the photo on Salazar's roll of zombie grabbing dad from behind,
Yeah.
that's like, oh, this was a fucked up situation.
Yeah.
But this whole phone call thing, like, where's Grace?
Yeah. And you know what it is? It's like it sounds less like a confessional, like less like the monologue at the towards the end of Blair Witch Project,
Uh-huh.
which I think is what is like so affecting is because it's really emotional
Yeah.
And you're just like, you're signing, you're writing your last letter. You're like, Mom and Dad, I love you. I'm so like, I fucked up. I'm so sorry. Versus this is like, I don't know, it's that creepy evangelical thing that I'm just like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd be like this star. I feel like the emotions would be in a different place.
Yeah, agreed. I wanted this to be realistic character and not them going for the creep out. I wanted them
Yeah.
to. I think it would have been way creepier if we heard a rational person going through
Yeah.
an irrational moment.
And also, if there had been sort of like forensic clues as to what was happening, because audio, as you and I both
Hmm.
know, is a really powerful medium to be like, where are you? I'm trapped in here. What can I see? What has happened? Like, if he had sort of provided like more clues to the story from his point of view.
Yeah.
And then what's kind of interesting is have his sort of pastor, I guess is who they interview with up in Colorado, who's like, I think that Francisco Salazar should be hanged. Like kind of back to the, I've even heard the audio confession that's definitely doesn't implicate Salazar. And I'm still going for it was a lone shooter theory.
Yeah. Well, Salazar was looking for Grace, couldn't find her, and so he knows she must be at the school. So that's where he goes to the school. And you have a bunch of kids. I found this interesting too. It's a great point by Olivares. There were 9 kids and 1 teacher in that school. It's 8:30 at night and they are still in this
Oh,
school
yeah.
because these are the kids that are children of the parents
Yeah.
working in the fields
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that are all dead and never could come pick them up because there
Yeah.
were like
And they're
11
waiting. Yeah. They're
people
waiting for
dead.
parents that will never come.
Yeah. And of course, we're going to see photos of inside the school. It's a fucking bloodbath
Oh, yeah.
in there. Um, and then, of course, we kind of get these sidebar stories of like, listen, the murder, it's from the attorney, from junior attorney.
Oh, Jesus.
But he does make a good point. He's like, once the idea is planted, once these children were murdered, once the idea was planted that
Yeah.
you were the one who did this, meaning Salazar, it's almost no coming back from that.
Yeah.
People
Child
want your
murderer
blood.
is like as low as you can go.
Yeah.
Once you're labeled with that, you can't unscrub it.
No, people want you dead and you can't get out from underneath that. So Salazar couldn't get into the school, but he goes around back, and that's where he finds Grace, seems to be like the last child left alive, trying to get out of a window.
A barred window.
Barred window.
Which again, like a subtle, one of the things I like is like it's a subtle metaphor for what this whole movie is about, which is like the sort of the economic disparity of like bars on windows. Like,
Yeah.
why does the school need bars on its windows? Something that is meant to protect the children is actually what's keeping them from getting out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so there's 3 photos, and it's the final 3 photos
Love
on
it.
his reel. Photo 35, because he got 37 shots out of this roll. Grace is grabbing at the
Screaming.
bars, screaming.
And she looks very mature. And like what's really interesting, one of the things that, super sheriff was like, we found suggestive pictures of young girls. And it's really just like she's just playing in a yard.
Yes.
She's playing like peekaboo behind a cactus
Yeah.
and looking very childlike.
Yeah.
This photo, there's like a real maturity. It's like when you see a child, a baby, and they're like, that baby looks like an 85-year-old man. This is like that, where it's like she's just like got both hands on the bar and she's screaming and she looks adult.
Yeah. She looks it's so hard to pinpoint her age.
Yeah.
And then she's at this preschool. Actually, and you wonder if she's the child of these missionary family. Is she actually at the preschool just to be with the other kids, just to be taken care of? Because she looks older than 5. But then in this photo, she looks like 15, or I don't know, it's crazy. But yeah, so photo 35, Grace trying to break through the bars and screaming. 36, Grace turning around as zombies are on top of her. And the final photo, photo 37, she's back facing the bars, reaching her hand out, and
Yeah.
Salazar, while taking the photo, has taken her hand in his. And this is, I really loved this moment. One, these are beautiful photos, really scary, very heart-wrenching. I think they're beautifully done. And then to counterpoint that with the interview with Lynn Matheson, the photographer, just like my stomach fell. This is a really big emotional moment. And Lynn says, I couldn't help in these. I loved all of these photos of his, except for these last three. Because why did he switch to his flash? Why now? Like he had such great composition, such a great understanding of his subject. And then suddenly he starts using the flash. And then this final photo of him taking the little girl's hand, that's the moment he chose to no longer be an artist. That's the moment he chose to just be a human being. And it gave up what kept him alive during the process. Like he threw his art out to become part of the scene. And you're not supposed to do that. It's kind of the sense of he lost all respect for Salazar because he touched this little girl's hand.
Yeah. He broke the fourth wall.
Yeah.
He broke the lens.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he got bit.
Yeah.
But we do get like a sort of a halting, grunting confession that said the reason why he turned the flash on is to distract the zombies.
Because he found that they would halt for a second while the flash was happening.
And he tried 3 times, but it wasn't enough for her to escape.
No. So, Renee Davies, the woman who had been interviewing him at the prison, the social worker, she says, there's only 3 possibilities. He's either lying, Salazar's either lying about his zombie story, he's crazy, made it up, or he's telling the truth. And I can tell you, I know people who are lying and I know people who are crazy, and he's neither. So Lawrence Ross Jr. publishes his book about the SDC murders. And
is it like right before he's executed, right after, around the appeal, somewhere in there?
Yeah, it was right around the time of I think they talk about it right before his appeal, his conviction gets upheld. Right. So it's right before he goes to be executed. Ross's book, he invokes Tulsa race massacre, Rodney King, Zoot Suit riots, and so on and so on. This country has a long history of this. It's very clear who had the motives and resources to murder an entire town and blame it on a dark-skinned man. And that basically is the sheriff and all of the government. And so his book posits that the town murdered these people. Yeah.
Like it was like a Ku Klux Klan style scrubbing of this border town.
And it's so funny because like no one can process the notion of zombie. We can't actually see, really, from our point of view as horror movie watchers, Occam's razor is it's zombie.
Yeah.
Occam's razor, zombies. And people, Occam's razor is a little tough because we're built around certain narratives. And as horror movie fans, our narrative is there might be zombies.
Or just believe your eyes.
Yeah.
Like,
but when you grow up as either perpetuators of racism or victims of racism, it's hard not to see everything through those eyes.
Yeah. And I think it's, we have, again, back to this idea, we have this sort of, the left and the right have both come up with not correct conclusions that support what they already know, rather than expanding their horizon of what could be and what they actually have footage of, to be like, oh shit, it looks like a whole bunch of people like that are maybe zombies. Those people do look quite undead.
So he gets executed. They do it in record time. They'd never pushed through an execution this quickly through the Arizona system. Sheriff Pirano gets elected an 8th time to his position as sheriff. And Salazar is executed. And as Greer says, Gus Greer, the Alex Jones of this movie, he's on his radio show saying, and you know where they buried Francisco Salazar right here in the state of Arizona. Even in death, he manages not to get deported.
But good thing that good, true Christian Americans went up and dug his body up because his corpse isn't there anymore.
Uh-uh. So Olivares, back to him, he was like, no one can see the bigger picture. And these zombies, when you look at where Salazar went that night, the zombie figures were all headed in one direction and they were headed north. And so now here's some maps I've drawn on my
Oh
wall.
my gosh, here we go.
But 7 weeks after Salazar's execution and burial, bodies of mutilated campers found in a national forest like 115 miles north. There's like 12 dead in some small town in Utah, and it's just spreading throughout the country of
Yeah,
these.
5 missing, 9 dead, 10 missing. Yeah.
So in our epilogue here, there's a card that says park rangers recovered a video camera at a Trevino, Arizona crime scene. And we just get distorted footage of camper of just, I couldn't even really tell what was happening in this footage.
Which I do kind of like that it's,
Uh-huh.
we've watched so many distorted footage. Like we've recovered this footage and it's like it has some glitches in it, but really somehow miraculously, it's hours and hours of usable footage. This is like so glitched out, you can barely make out what you're watching.
Mhm.
But it's like somebody on a mountain bike, tent, campsite. The tent starts like shaking back and forth, and there's somebody screaming, and then somebody in an orange jumpsuit running towards the camera, camera down.
Uh-huh. Yikes. Which we presume is the zombified body of Francisco Salazar.
Yep.
Yep. Great.
Title card.
The end. Shall we rate this movie, Cecil?
Yes, let's.
All right, so let's start with rating it for approachability. How approachable is this movie? If you are horror movie averse on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the least approachable and 10 being very approachable, this one's tough to pinpoint. Like, I would give Savageland, like, let's just put it in the middle, 5 out of 10 racist barflies. Like, it's not scary, save for the photos. Like, the photos are nightmare fuel. They're really creepy. But there's no, like, jump scares.
No.
Other than that epilogue, which has some kind of like heart-pounding tension, sort of.
There's a lot of blood in the beginning, but it's like a man in a hazmat suit carrying a bloody garbage bag out of a house with, you know, or like blood stains on a floor of an abandoned building.
Yeah. Maybe like, I'll bump it up to 6. It seems pretty approachable. The blood is a lot, but it mostly is like just ketchup splatter in a way that suggests something horrible. So like we do with like Welcome to Night Vale or Within the Wires or whatever, like where you want to suggest a horror,
the suggestion is
it's
all,
what it's left out that you have to imagine for yourself. And I think that's the thing here is that that's what this movie does really well. So you're dealing with a lot of implied gore from a lot of blood. You're dealing with the heavy, heavy racist stuff. The creepy photos are nightmare fuel. That's the scariest part. And then obviously like seeing child and animal death. Like you're not witnessing the death, but you're seeing
R.I.P. that dachshund lying on the side of the road.
Oh, that sweet baby.
That is
dachshund.
clearly just like a dachshund just like taking a nap in the sun.
Oh, it's so
I did
funny.
like that they put a like no animals were harmed in the making of this film. So I was like, that dachshund's so
Actually, the animal death is the cutest part of this movie.
It's the cutest part.
Dachshund laying
like you just
on the
went
road.
pew pew and the dachshund just laid down.
So let's say 6 out of 10 for approachability. To speak nothing of approachability, how do you rate this as a horror film, Cecil?
As a horror film, this like I love the independent spirit. Love it. Like I said, it took me a little bit to get into it. Act 1 was a little hard for me. But then once we got into those photographs and the like 3D visual mapping procedural part, I was like, this is serial. Vice TV meets zombies meets Vietnam photography, like action, like wartime action photography in which you're trying to, I fucking loved it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I thought like some bits, like you said, were a little heavy-handed, but we also live in the year 2025 when there's things, it's just, everybody's got a heavy hand.
Nap time.
Yeah, I know. Dirt nap.
Mm-hmm.
So for that reason, I think like a really independent spirit and a really interesting way of using the found footage genre that nobody's done. So for that, I'm going to say like 6 out of 10. Dead dachshunds by the side of the road.
Well, let's figure out what movie we will watch next. You've got a scare die, I've got a style die. We will roll those up and see what movie fits those two things. So Cecil, on your scare die, if you roll a 1, our next movie scare is technology. 2, wild card. 3, a conspiracy. 4, Mother Nature. 5, haunted. Or 6, we added this, let's eat. Something to do with food as the scary part.
That's a 3.
Gonna get that conspiracy.
Oh,
All right, so
another
we're going to match up
conspiracy.
your conspiracy with the style I roll. If I roll a 1, our next movie style is black and white film. 2, it's a procedural. 3, it's a sequel, prequel, or remake. 4, it's campy in its humor. 5, it's from the 1980s. Or 6, it is from a country in the EU. What do we got here? I also got a 3, a sequel, prequel, or remake.
Fun. That one's been on the dice for a minute.
Yeah, Conspiracy's been on for 9 weeks. Sequel, prequel, remake, 11 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
knocked out.
dive. Ooh, we got a lot here.
We do. So let's talk about the ones we wrote down, which we have a lot, but we also post all these possible die rolls up on our letterboxd at Random Horror 9, so you can follow our lists and even add comments to help us find movies that fit these things. So we got a lot of suggestions along with the ones that we wrote down. Okay, so Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah.
There was a remake of this film. A
Meryl
recent.
Streep, Liev
Yes.
Schreiber, Denzel Washington.
I said recent, but it was like 20
No,
years
it's
ago, right? Like
it's like
mid
2001 or 2002
Yeah,
or something.
early 2000s. Yeah. There is 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Oh, yes.
Definitely a what's happening here? Who are these
Yeah,
men and
like,
why is this?
In the Cloverfield universe.
Paranormal Activity, the marked ones we wrote down.
I think it'd be so I think I've seen one of the sequels of Paranormal Activity. I just don't know which one because it was on TV that was just on. I was like, oh, Paranormal Activity 2, 3, 4, 10. I don't
Sure.
fucking know. So I can't speak for this one, but I don't know. I'd be interested in revisiting the paranormal universe.
Same. Would it be a conspiracy? I never think of these movies as conspiracy.
Well, I think that's what this gets into is like, why is that demon following this girl? Or like,
Okay.
who put that demon on them?
I see. Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Another classic.
Classic camp, super like top 10, top 5 horror movies of mine. That's very like, there's definitely a conspiracy as to why zombie?
And this is technically a sequel to
Sure.
Night of the Living Dead. It's not George Romero
No, but it is,
because he got to keep of the dead,
yeah.
and the other guy got to keep of the living dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. Oh, We Are What We Are. So there was an English language
Yes.
remake of Somos Lo Que Hay,
Yeah.
which definitely looks conspiratorial,
Yeah,
or
I
at
don't
least
know.
a secret.
The family secrets.
X-Files Can't Fight the Future. Definitely
Listen.
conspiracy.
I put this one on here because I've never seen either of the X-Files films, but I was like, you know who loves a conspiracy theory? The X-Files.
Mulder, love it.
And I think I read a description of both the X-Files films, and Can't Fight the Future seemed like the most apt for conspiracy.
Okay. Oh, the first Purge is a great one. I mean, loose with conspiracy, but it's
Sort of a nationwide conspiracy to just
yeah, and
start shooting people.
we start talking about kind of like we start getting into fascism, right? Like
Yeah.
we start getting into the way in which people are drawn together towards crazy
Yeah.
fucking ideas.
Like just, one day in which we just have a really tough day in which the law just shows them what's what. That's all we need.
And finally on our list, Speak No Evil.
So there's an English remake of Speak No Evil that came out with James McAvoy that again, conspiracy is in like we're like entrapment.
Yes.
Come to our beach house. It's gonna be so much fun. You can't
Yes.
leave.
Yes, I remember the previews for this movie from last year of James McAvoy being awesome at pretty much all acting, but very good at being scary, creepy.
Super scary and super ripped and hot.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's get into what the folks on Letterboxd had to say.
Okay, we got some good ones
Oh
here.
yeah,
Damon Fudge recommends The First Omen.
of
Now, this one came
course.
out pretty recently, right? This
Hmm.
like this year, this past year. A young American woman is sent to Rome to begin her life of service to the church, but encounters a darkness that causes her to question her faith and uncovers a terrifying conspiracy that hopes to bring about the birth of the evil incarnate. And
Oh,
it says this is way better than it has any right to be, which is something I've been hearing a lot about this film.
yeah, it's got a really great like whatever ratings on
Yes.
online for whatever those are worth.
Matty Parka recommends the 2018 remake of Suspiria.
Definitely. Yeah,
I feel like we've covered this for the show, but we haven't. I
we
think
have
you and I have
not.
just independently watched it and talked about it.
We talked about it like for
3 years ago?
almost like 5 years ago when it was at the beginning of 2020, and you and I did a show where we talked about
That's
Suspiria
it. We're like,
2018
what if
and
yeah,
Evil Dead 2 on the Night Vale
that's it.
Patreon hangout. Yeah,
And then that turned into this
this show.
podcast.
Yes.
But yeah, love the conspiracy of like, hey, you're just at a dance company, or are you?
Uh-huh.
Diamond Dogs recommends Body Snatchers from 1993, the invasion of the Body Snatchers plot, but this time at a military base. Not a
Nice.
classic like the other two, but actual pretty good. This is like, I think out of all the incarnations of Body Snatchers, this one is like, everyone's like, oof, this one's kind of a dog.
Hmm.
But thank you, Diamond Dogs, for the
But we could
suggestion.
complete the set, you know,
I know,
if
right?
we watch
Catch
it.
them
Sure.
all. Suspicious Beans recommends Resident Evil Apocalypse 2004. I love this. As I've stated, I cannot resist Mia Jovovich. Same Suspicious
Mhm.
Beans. Love her. Raccoon City, under quarantine. Alice confirms most of the dead are now zombies. Joining a small band of soldiers, she tries to rescue daughter of the creator of the virus, but she soon learned that she has a very specific role to play. Oh,
Okay.
love those millennial, like video game movies. There's so many, and
Yes, we did
honestly,
not Resident Evil. What did we do? We
Silent
did Silent
Hill.
Hill for Patreon. And even though it's not a video game movie, Underworld was a lot of fun, which I kind of associate
Yeah, it
Underworld and
feels like
Resident
it. Yeah,
Evil. Yeah.
but I feel like Resident Evil was like the OG of those.
Yes. Yes.
Weaponized Toaster recommends Suspiria, recommends The First Omen, and recommends VHS 2, which is again
Oh yeah, there's a
is
cult in that, right?
yeah, there's like legit cult, which is honestly one of my favorite cult movies, cult short films. Sandra also proposes The Purge election year.
Okay.
I've only seen, I think I've seen the first three-fourths of the original Purge, so I've not seen any of the others. So I'm a blank canvas when it comes to the Purge. Temmie Silver recommends Black Christmas from 2018. A group of
Interesting.
college girls are systematically picked off over winter break, but the perpetrator's motive may go beyond a simple vendetta. Yeah,
Interesting.
I didn't see, because there was like two remakes of
Yeah.
Black Christmas within like a year or two of each other, right?
Uh-huh.
And I think I missed them both. So the fact that there's like maybe some sort of conspiracy in it, that was definitely not in the first one, but I don't know, slather some conspiracy on my Black Christmas if you want.
Sure.
Night Captive thirds The First Omen. Cronenberg TA seconds Return of the Living Dead. Ganymede's Cup recommends VHS 94, the American found footage horror anthology film with 4 segments linked by a frame narrative, sequel to VHS, et cetera, et cetera. A police SWAT team investigates a mysterious VHS tape and discovers a sinister cult that has pre-recorded material, which uncovers a nightmarish conspiracy.
All right, so they brought back a cult vibe for
Yeah.
VHS 94. Okay.
And I think, the idea of 94 is that it all is of the 1994 kind of era.
Yeah, the look and feel of that, and then
Yeah.
also of that time. Yeah.
Like I think there's some skater
Oh
bros,
yeah.
you know. Fifth Hammer recommends Alien Romulus. Scavenging an abandoned space station, a group of
Hmm.
young colonists come across a lab full of the most terrifying life form in the universe. If there's any doubt, this film proves the depth of the true evil of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation.
Yeah. Actually, all of the Alien movies, except for the first one, qualify for this category,
That's a bit of
really.
conspiracy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all conspiracy.
You have an objective within the objective.
Hmm.
And Fifth Hammer also recommends Apartment 7A. Let's see.
Oh, that's a new one, right?
Yeah, it's from 2004. Terry Giannoffrio dreams of Broadway success in New York City, but after suffering an injury, an older, wealthy couple welcomes her into their home in Bramford. When she
Okay.
receives an offer at another chance, it seems all her dreams are coming true. However, disturbing circumstances soon have her second guessing it all. A prequel to Rosemary's Baby.
Okay. That's
Interesting.
interesting because I pulled up this on Just Watch, and the photo, the color palette, and the look of it is all very Rosemary's Baby. In fact, you can see the Dakota on
Interesting.
the poster. So
Okay.
that's
So it's
interesting.
like
It's got,
what was that cult up to before Rosemary moved in?
yeah, that's very curious. And Diane Wiest is in it as
Love
oh,
her.
as Minnie Castevet.
Yes. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
JB Wolf recommends The Final Conflict or The Omen 3. Damon is all grown up, and it's time for that Armageddon we've been promised.
Yay, finally, Damien.
I know. Book of a Second
Yes.
Suspiria, and also Prometheus from 2012.
Another
Again,
alien
back to
film.
the alien universe. Sir Zora recommends Cube, Hypercube, and Cube Zero.
I'm more of a
Seeming,
Diet Cube guy than Cube Zero.
no, Cube Light.
No, I don't do Cube Light.
No, Cube,
Mm-mm.
Diet Cube.
Yeah, I love Diet Cube.
So yeah, a seemingly random assortment of people are trapped into a cuboid puzzle filled with traps.
Okay. Yep. Haven't watched the Cube franchise yet. Would like to see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen Cube. Cube is awesome.
Okay,
It
great.
was very like kind of ahead of its time in a lot of ways. Monstrum, seconds Alien Romulus. Dartigen, seconds Alien Romulus, and also recommends just aliens.
As we said earlier, like I think all of the Alien movies pretty much fit into this
Yeah.
category.
Vault and Spider, also aliens, and also throwing down Evangelion 1.11. You are not alone.
One of these days, Voltant Spider, we will get to an Evangelion something on the show. Probably, it's enough weirdness in that show. I don't know when or how we'll get
It's a
to
TV
it. But
show. No, this is a film, right?
there's a whole bunch of them. But yeah,
Okay.
there was originally a TV show.
And
There's
then a
some
movie of a
films and
TV show,
thing,
and
and
then
whatever.
yeah.
I will say the tough part about the TV show for this podcast is I think like the horror of it really lands later because it gets
Yeah.
crazy. Like it
Oh,
gets
but
deranged toward
but you've
the
got to
end.
like build up to the crazy.
Yeah, for a while you're just like, this is a
Yeah.
really cool anime. And then towards the end of that 27 episode season that they did, you're like, what the fuck am I watching? What is going
Okay.
down? Yeah.
Okay. Ace Diamond recommends The Blob from 1998. Hey, check out our
Oh yeah, we
podcast.
just did that. Yeah.
Coming soon. And Troll 2. Family vacations in a rural town with only the youngest child realizing that the townsfolk are all secretly trolls,
Oh,
conspiring
okay.
to
That is a
transform
conspiracy.
the human newcomers into food.
Okay, that's quite a conspiracy.
I've never seen Troll 2, but weirdly
Mm-mm.
enough, I have seen the documentary about how campy Troll 2 is.
Okay.
So that's a weird one. And Ace Diamond also recommends Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which
we've done that. Yes.
for the Patreon, no, we did that for a regular
Did
episode.
that for
if I remember
regular.
right.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good one.
Watch Radio, same with the Blob. Check out that episode. Pie Mag recommends A Haunting in Venice. Vengeful ghosts of murdered children pick off guests in a dilapidated Venetian villa. Detective Poirot is sure it's merely a conspiracy carried out by a phony medium, but begins to doubt himself. Very picturesque, scares and spooky atmosphere than you might expect from a Poirot. Absolutely agree with that.
Interesting.
Michelle Yeoh is Grey's the medium. Feels like the remake franchise finally hit its stride and starting to have fun, even if you weren't convinced that Kenneth Branagh is Hercule Poirot. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
definitely it has the tone of a horror film. So totally agree with you, Pie Mag, there. Fortranio recommends Hostel 2, digs in deeper into that Hunters Club lore.
Uh-huh.
Fascinating. and it spans so many people that could be considered a conspiracy at that point. Love that. And Attack on Titan.
Oh yeah. Okay.
The film can be
Yeah.
considered a remake of the anime, more adventure than horror, but it certainly fits the bill. The conspiracies part doesn't go as deep as in the anime, where there are conspiracies within conspiracies within conspiracies, but there is some. Crow thoughts. Cube 2 hypercube. Listen, you
Okay.
can't eat, you don't get cube 2 hypercube unless you finish all your cube.
Jeez.
Death
Hypercube.
Doll
I love that.
19 recommends the marked ones and the first omen. And finally, Bin Bun
Hmm.
recommends 10 Cloverfield Lane and the Cloverfield Paradox, which I didn't even know that they had made, a Mother Nature Plus sequel.
Oh yeah.
But
Okay.
it says it definitely fits, maybe better for those, but could fit into the conspiracy.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Yeah. Letterbox brought it. Got some good ones in here.
Cool. I
So,
like this because conspiracy, we're coming at different angles of horror.
mm-hmm.
We've got conspiracies with a dash of zombie. We've got conspiracies with a dash of Satan. We've got conspiracies with a dash of fascism. We've
Mm-hmm.
got conspiracies with a dash of an axe wielding killer.
Yeah. All very interesting. So, as I always ask, what's standing out to you, Cecil?
Oh, goodness. Okay, let's look at what we got here. Conspiracy. Have you ever seen Return of the Living Dead?
I still have never seen this movie. No.
Okay, that's on the list because it
Yes.
is just the shit.
Uh-huh.
As much as like the Manchurian Candidate is like that sequel is kind of bunk. Like
Yeah.
it's okay. I can see what they're swinging at, but really you're just like it's just like I don't know. There's just I've seen it not recently, but like I think I was on TV and I was like, this is a weird ass movie.
Uh-huh.
Like it's not hitting. Like I said, I'd be kind of interested to return to the Paranormal Activity universe because I
Uh-huh.
think there is a conspiracy of like we're gonna put a curse on you kind of conspiracy.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious about the We Are What We Are remake, but to be honest, I think I'd rather watch the original.
Same. I think if we had already covered the original
Yeah,
for the
same
show,
with Speak No Evil. Like
yeah,
I hear that I don't know. I feel like sometimes things are lost in the remakes a little bit.
agreed.
And then from the suggestions from Letterboxd, The First Omen and 7A.
Mm-hmm. Damon Fudge gave us the first
Yeah,
Omen. Fifth Hammer gave
yeah,
us
a
Apartment
couple people
7A.
First Omen.
Ace Diamond recommended Troll 2 if we wanted to go
Oh my
pure campy. It's one
God.
that comes up a lot.
Conspiracy Village.
Yeah,
Yeah.
total conspiracy village. And yeah, I think of our list.
Oh, and then all the
Oh
aliens.
yeah.
And then there's
And
like
then any of the
pick an
aliens. I
alien.
always want to watch Aliens for this show.
Yeah,
But 10 Cloverfield is really intriguing to me, and so is Return of the Living Dead,
sure.
obviously. I think is a classic
Yeah.
that we need to cover. So I would be super down to do Return of the Living Dead. And then any of those ones I just mentioned, those really stuck out to me from Letterboxd.
Okay. So I think we have, I see a fork in the road.
Okay.
One of them is we have a lot of awesome suggestions, enough to put six on the dice and roll for it.
Totally.
But it also sounds like you and I might be converging on Return of the Living Dead.
I just think it's such an important movie, and I feel like, I forget
I mean,
our
and I know
order
we
of how we got to here.
just rolled zombies, but we kind of got no zombie action. So I feel a
That's
little bit
true.
zombie blue balls. So, and believe me, Return of the Living Dead is going to give you the full release.
Yes, and also coming off of Savageland and Baskin, which were both really cool movies that I didn't know much about going
Yeah.
into them. It'll be nice to hit up a classic and this
Yeah.
touchstone. Yeah,
Shall
you
we
guys.
do it?
Yeah, you guys gave us great stuff this time on Letterboxd, but I think it's hard to turn down Return of the Living Dead, so let's do that.
Absolutely.
Let me just. I'm pretty
Just make
positive
sure it
this
is
is
in the
available
ether.
wherever you get your movies. It is. That's perfect. And also, we're going to get a bitchin' soundtrack.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, thank you all for listening. Thank you, Cecil, for talking with me. And if you have thoughts on Savageland or ideas for conspiracy meets sequel, prequel, remake, let us know at Random Horror 9 on our Patreon discussion threads, which are open for each and every member, free or not. And also over on our Instagram, also Random Horror 9. And watch The Return of the Living Dead 1985 with us this week, and come on back next Tuesday for a new episode. Have a restful night with no 20-year-old public defenders botching your case or nothing. Boo.
Ooh.